Well, it is my pleasure to introduce to the audience Mr. James Fremantle. He is the Manager for Consumer Policy and Enforcement with the UK CAA, the Civil Aviation Authority. James, there you are. And I will go out of the photo, out of the image, and leave it to you. Welcome. James, do you have your sound on?
How's that? That better?
Perfect. Absolutely.
All right.
All right.
Can everyone see my slides?
Yes, very clear.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, thanks again for inviting us to this event today. Really pleased to be here. I think it's the third time you've invited to the UKCA, so really proud and privileged to be able to come and speak to the attendees today. Unfortunately not in person, but online is the next best thing. So I've been asked to talk today about how the UKCA has regulated this area for the last sort of year and a half, with all the challenges that have been thrown at us and thrown at the industry. It has been a difficult time for us as well as industry. We obviously have been constrained in what we can do. Many of my staff have been moved over to different priorities, which means our role in accessibility has been less than it has been in the past. But I'm pleased to say that in general, we're really pleased with the way the UK industry has held up in the last year and a half in terms of consumer protection, not just accessibility, but other areas that my team covers. But in particular regarding accessibility, really pleased that standards have been maintained and often exceeded. We ourselves have, when we can, have been out to airports and spoken to airlines, and really amazed by the commitment to providing a quality service to the few passengers that were travelling. And often the few passengers that were travelling were very important passengers. For example, in the UK, from the Scottish Islands to the mainland is a key link for many people, for people going to hospital, that sort of thing. So I always try to get it across to sort of my bosses here at the UKCA that it's not just about holidaymakers. Accessibility is very important for really important things, such as people going to hospital on the mainland, people visiting friends and family, that sort of thing. And over the last year and a half, it's amazing actually how well the UK aviation industry, and from what I understand, the worldwide industry, is held up in these challenging times. So with that, just on to my first slide. I thought I'd give you some statistics from the UK first of all. So in 2019, there were 3 million, nearly 4 million assistance requests at UK airports. That was 1.29% of all passengers requested support. And that was up from 1.07 in 2014, the first year we recorded it. And you'll not be surprised to know that in 2020, that went down to 725,000 requests, a decrease of 82% from 2019. Penetration rate was 1% in that period compared to 1.35% in 2019. Passenger numbers decreased from 75% to 73 million. This did vary according to routes and airports, and as I just said, the Scottish links were still very important. Logan Air, actually quite a sizable UK regional airline, told me that actually their PRM numbers only decreased by 50% throughout the sort of the main part of the pandemic and through lockdown, obviously because many passengers were still flying from the Scottish Islands and different regions to get to places like hospital and to visit friends and family. But in general, passenger numbers were down across all airports between somewhere of the range of 56 to 86%, with PRM numbers down 71% to 95%. That's based on airports. Domestic routes were slightly less affected. I was at Belfast earlier this week, and I was pleased to hear from Belfast International that passenger numbers back up to 65%. That's all passenger numbers, PRM numbers, similar sort of amount. So there is for some airports, things are really improving. In the UK, it's particularly the domestic focused airports. So looking back to COVID-19 accessibility, it's quite a long time ago that so forgive me if some of my memories is not exactly correct, but back in April 2020, we acted quickly to identify some risks that we felt would have a disproportionate impact on passengers requesting support, and also how airports and airlines would comply with the accessibility legislation. There are many changes to airport and airline processes, the removal of seating, the social distancing on minibuses and buggies, disinfecting of wheelchairs. If you remember well, close person-to-person support was not allowed for quite a few months. You all remember and we still have to do it, the passenger locator forms that are pretty much relevant to all, at least all EU countries and I think all countries around the world. They're still having to be completed. And obviously for some vulnerable consumers, completing those forms has become more difficult, particularly people that don't have ready access to sort of digital forms. And face coverings, that was an impact and disproportionate impact we felt on passengers, vulnerable passengers. It may be that we found that people with autism or asthma or allergies find it more difficult to use face coverings. So that was something, a risk that we identified right at the beginning. Back in April and May 2020, there was a particular issue of many UK passengers and UK residents being stuck abroad, having to get home very quickly. I think over here they call it one of the biggest repatriation exercises that's been done since the Second World War. So a big operation, and lots of credit must go to particularly Heathrow, who managed this operation exceedingly well, bringing back many passengers in a very short space of time from places abroad, particularly the Indian subcontinent. I know they were often dealing with flights with more than 100 PRMs at a time, and these were quite regular. And this was all with a skeleton staff at airports. Obviously, disruption was caused by many people being off sick because of COVID, and also because of other challenges they had to meet. As I said, the requirement to wear face coverings at airports and onboard aircraft has been something that's with us the whole time and actually continues to be with us now. We still know of some restrictive airline policies regarding some UK airlines, which we have concerns with, and foreign airlines, which are still in discussions with them. And it looks like the issue of face coverings will be something that will carry on at least for another year or so, you'd think. As I talked about Heathrow repatriation flights, just a few figures on that. I saw you had Steve on your panel this morning, so apologies to Steve if I've repeated this. From April the 8th to April the 29th, there were 1,300 repatriation flights. Number of passengers who received assistance, over 16,000. And as I say, 63 flights had over 50 people on, and one flight, I was told, had 138, of which 128 were transferring. This as well, 85% were put on furlough, which was the UK scheme to provide support to all industries, not just aviation. But I'm really pleased to say that Heathrow met or bettered quality standards for the vast majority of these flights, which I think is exceptional. So this is how we responded to the challenges. Aviation had their own challenges, but I think it's also bearing in mind that regulators in all sectors, not just aviation, have had their own challenges how to regulate in these sort of unheralded times. We provided support to Heathrow with the repatriation flights, kept in close contact with the airport staff. We also liaised with our colleagues in the UK Home Office. We managed to pass on information to Heathrow on the passengers' needs, because often the information of these people returning from on these repatriation flights wasn't good, and we know that pre-notification was bad through this period. We tried to get as much information as we could through our Home Office to pass on to Heathrow. And I think importantly, we recognise the challenges that industry had by alleviating many of our requirements under our quality standards framework. And for the repatriation flights, we alleviated all our requirements, saying to the industry and to Heathrow, just do as well as you can under these exceptional circumstances. For those non-repatriation flights, we alleviated some of the requirements under our quality standards framework, but we kept in the standards involved with providing timely assistance. We see as a key part of the framework and a key requirement under accessibility legislation. And it's quite clear, at least from our government, that accessibility legislation across all transport sectors was still in force, and they expected regulators to enforce the regulations. We carried out a survey of all airports and airlines. We wrote to all UK airports and the top 20 international airlines asking about key services. As I say, we carry out some, when possible, on-site visits to main airports. But the positive responses we've had from consumers and from the industry gave us reassurance that the impact of COVID was not having the undue effect we might have expected, which I think is really good news. We published guidance for airlines on face coverings, where we tried to ensure that airlines provided a more reasonable policy. We still are speaking to some airlines about the policy of requiring doctors' letters for people to be exempt. We have concerns about this. We've amended our policy to say that we don't think that's lawful, and we're working with airlines to find a balance between what they want, which is to ensure safety on board their aircraft, with ensuring that those people with particular needs aren't unduly affected on this issue. I'm sure the face coverings issue will continue to be something we'll look at for a long time to come. And we've spoken to disability charities and disability organisations regularly throughout the pandemic. And issues for the restart and our priorities going forward. We want to ensure that accessibility remains a top priority for airports and airlines. We're going to reintroduce our full set of quality standards from October the 1st this year, which has actually happened now. So airlines and airports are understand this, and will start bringing in their data requirements back to us as they did pre-pandemic. We've told them that we're committed to continued publication of airport reports, and the next report will come out in the 22-23 year. So we've committed to not reporting this year because of the sort of unique circumstances, but we sort of expect things to get back to normal with our next report out summer 23. Many airports have contacted us about issues to do pre-notification, and I suspect it was an issue you discussed this morning in your event. We understand the issues, and we accept that without good pre-notification, providing a high quality service is extremely difficult. So we've committed to doing some work on that to improve compliance from airlines, and we'll target certain airlines who have routinely badly at pre-notifying. And also, with that in mind, we've committed to restarting our airline framework. This was something we put in place, and we did some research on a year or so ago. We had to pause it because of the pandemic, but we committed to restarting the airline framework and getting a proposal out later this year or early next year. And same with the assistance dog proposal. Something that's really relevant in the UK is assistance dogs, and we're committed to putting out a proposal on this again late this year or next year. We want to ensure airports and airlines retain their knowledge of our requirements. To do that, we're starting a process of re-engaging with industry. We've already met a number of airports, many who we hadn't seen for at least a year or so. That's really been pleasing to do that. And we also want to start re-engaging with airlines. Again, airlines we haven't been able to speak to for a long time. Just to finally say that, of course, as the profile of our quality standards framework in the UK has grown, the scrutiny of ourselves and how we carry out the assessments has increased. So we're going to publish some further guidance for UK airports on how they meet our guidance, particularly looking at the issue of data recording, which we've had some problems with in the past. We wanted to use this sort of quieter time to get to grips with these data collection issues at UK airports. So a lot of our focus over the next 3 or 4 months will be in producing this new guidance for airports, which in general we think have been received well from the UK airports. And finally, recovering September 21, the CA is committed to building up confidence of disabled passengers travel by air. So as I say, re-engaging with stakeholders. We want to support charity and disabled organisations in building confidence of disabled and less mobile passengers. We want airports to reintroduce accessibility forums, something that's we haven't required them to do for the last 1.5 years, but we're pleased to say that most airports actually have taken it upon themselves to do that. And the CA started doing its quarterly tracker surveys, where we track all passengers' confidence, and I'm pleased to say that part of this survey focuses on disabled and PRMs, and we use that really sort of good research to measure how the confidence is in PRM passengers as they come back to flying. Evidence does point to recovery in PRM passengers in line with all passengers. September 21 PRM numbers at 25% of pre-pandemic, and compared to September 19 numbers. We've also noted now the penetration rate of PRMs is similar to that of pre-pandemic, which makes you think that actually, contrary to what people might have thought, PRMs are coming back to flying as quickly as any other passenger. And certainly when I go to airports, I see many elderly passengers and disabled passengers ready to get on holiday as much as anyone else. And it's really pleasing to see that PRM numbers are recovering well at the moment. And just finally, just to few slides on how our latest tracker survey, 49% of passengers expect to fly in the next 12 months, which I think is really good. This is from very recently. From our area, 1 in 5 disabled passengers say they expect to fly more in the next 12 months, I think, which is really good. As you can see that, and most 46% saying same amount, no change. So as I say, it doesn't really seem that PRMs have been put off travelling by current circumstances. And finally, which is really pleasing stat for us, we've been doing these tracker surveys since April 18, and for the first time since we've been doing these surveys, which come out every quarter, it's showing that disabled respondents are less likely to have difficulty at airports when flying compared to all other passengers. So I think that's really good news. Okay, I'll leave it there.
Thank you, James. I think the last slide tells the story, and it is very reassuring to hear for the first time, I think, that more people are feeling confident to fly, which is exactly the goal of all the great initiatives the UKCAA has been working on. But in terms of the long list of new initiatives, which are the ones that are going to be prioritized?
Obviously, the airport work is something that's we treat pretty much as business as usual now, and we set up the framework, and we don't want to allow the momentum to drop. We do feel we've been sympathetic to airports over the last year and a half. We've understood their challenges. We sort of got off their back to a certain extent, allowed them to get through the crisis as well as they could. But we do feel that sort of with the recovery, it's time to improve that momentum in as far as the airport framework is concerned. So we are starting to visit airports, starting to get them ready to meet our full standards. So we're sort of ramping up that part of our work, but that is sort of day-to-day work. As far as project-wise, the airline framework, I'm really keen to move on. As you know, we've done a lot of research in this area from about a year and a half ago. We went to look at airports, we looked at things like boarding processes, we looked at seating, all these different policies and processes from airlines, brought it all together. We're committed to doing a public report, and we're still at that stage. I'd like to bring the airline piece together and put out a framework similar to the airport framework, so we can sort of drive improvements in accessibility with airlines.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, James. And over to you, William.